Hi everyone, Regan-Sinclair here, and today I'd like to talk to you about trauma and birth trauma in particular, and how lots of people are now linking it to things like ADD, ADHD, dyslexia, dyspraxia, phobias, fears, all sorts of neurological issues and things related to autistic spectrum disorders. But there's a lot involved in it, so there's quite a few. The information has come to me and I've been making notes as it's been coming through, so I'm going to read some of it to you as I've just made the notes. So basically, way back, women used to give birth at home naturally. And if you think about that, I've heard this before, that we're meant to give birth, if we can, in the place that the child was conceived, because the energy of that home, that particular bedroom, that space, is the mother's safe space, and the child feels safe coming into the world into that energy. And squatting as well, the lying down and giving birth on our backs causes more pain, not just because of the position, which makes it difficult. Gravity helps when women squat to give birth. Obviously gravity is going to help. But we were not created to, one, have periods and menopause. We were not created to deliver babies in pain. The problem is the fact that people's refined foods and diets, certainly in the last 100 century or more, have caused a lack of nutrients in the body, so that when we are giving birth, the natural painkillers, the natural endorphins are not being produced, because there's not enough dietary nutrition there to produce those endorphins. So what happens? Well, first of all, we end up going into hospital, and the child's coming into the world, mother's traumatized, mother's frightened, she's in a room that's usually not very nice, very clinical, people coming and going, noise in the background of other mothers giving birth, screaming in the background can be very scary, particularly if it's your first child. And the energy of all that fear is going into the baby. The pain gets too much and we're given drugs. Well, if you weigh 140 pounds and you're given, 100 milligrams of a painkiller, I'm just using the word 100, I don't know doses in painkillers, but let's say, just for the sake of argument, you're given 100 milligrams of a painkiller and you're 140 pounds, that 7 pound baby has just been given 100 milligrams of painkiller. So it's given an overdose before it's even come into the world. And I really am like, wow, I'm so shocked with the download that I've been getting about this information. So there's more to it than that. If you look up statistics, apparently 20,000 deaths in every million are due to neonatal deaths and stillborn in America alone. That's a lot of children, babies dying in hospitals. So what's happening? All of this trauma is in our bodies, and it stays with us. So the baby is born and it's been poisoned with painkillers straight away, which anybody who's been honest and common sense would prevail that that's going to affect the brain. If there's problems with the birth and the child is being pulled out with a medieval forceps, its head's being crushed, there's traumatic brain injury, and terrified, coming into the world. So you've got that going on as well. And too many different frequencies in the room. Those of you that have been following me for some time, you know that I, work with energy. And can you imagine this lovely little ball of source energy coming into a room of all these stressed doctors, nurses, who knows if they're, they go home and drink a bottle of wine every night and have got entities in their system and stuff like that. Grabbing a child, it's not even given to the mother straight away half the time. It's taken out of the room by strangers and the bonding doesn't occur. And this can lead to lots of different problems. This can lead to postpartum depression because the bonding didn't happen properly, the trauma of the birth memories. That can lead to soul fragmentation. Those of you that know me, there's an article on my website in my blog about soul fragmentation and how critical that is to repairing trauma. And what's going on now, the other thing in that situation as well, talking about trauma, if the fathers are in the room, this can lead to them losing their sex drive for up to a year afterwards, impotency, because of the shock, and what they've witnessed can lower their testosterone levels and cause problems in that area. So we've got a whole family being traumatized here, whereas back in the day, the women came and helped if needed, but women were capable of being in the squatting position, and the child, they created their own painkillers through the endorphins because they were eating healthy, and it was the most natural thing in the world, and the child was born in the squat position into the mother's hands straight away. Less trauma for everyone concerned. Obviously, in some cultures, there's a lot of women coming, and some cultures they sing. There's a group of the women in the family come in and they sing the child's song as it's being born and things like that. But it's not common practice for the men to be there. And personally, knowing what I know now, I don't think it's a good idea, especially, when I've found out how it traumatizes men and can cause impotence and affect the sexual relationship of, the man and woman afterwards. So there's that to think about, okay? What else have we got here? Hospital births. So I've already mentioned that 20,000 die in every million born in hospital. This is US statistics. 20% of US citizens born in hospital are diagnosed with severe mental derangements. Now, if you think about what I've just said about, one, if there's any trauma, the baby's taking longer to be born because the mother's on her back, so obviously gravity is not helping push the baby out, it's taking longer. This can mean oxygen deprivation, and the cord is cut straight away, where the message I'm getting is it needs to be left for at least a few minutes to still feed oxygen to the baby. So you've got a baby coming into the world, struggling to come through into the world, held by strangers. As soon as it's born, because it's doped up on painkillers, it gets slapped, which is going to cause it shock and can cause soul fragmentation. When you think about what's going on here, and then you go further down the line, there's a lot of health issues that could be linked to this that have been labelled into the autistic spectrum category and affect people for life, all sorts of things. So what else have I put here? Made a few more notes. Apparently in Japan, ultrasound is another thing that's being banned before 3 months. Anyone who's had an ultrasound's probably seen the child jump in the womb, and what's happening there is not, oh great, this child wants to be a footballer. What's really happening is the ultrasound is upsetting the child, and it's like giving it a shock of vibrational frequencies. Remember, everything's energy, everything's a vibrational frequency. So this is why it's been banned in Japan before 3 months, because it can cause miscarriages and things like that. So there's a lot going on during the birth and pre-birth that is causing possible neurological damage and central nervous system damage to children. Okay, so this leads through into the other notes I've made here. Later in life, if a child is born with forceps, it can show through as neck problems and head problems, trauma, cranial problems, things like that. Also, when the mother has had anaesthetics and things like that, or during birth, this can lead to the child being lack of oxygen and brain injury. So the other thing I've got here, it can also lead to babies with weak muscle tone, and due to the mother's diet and trauma. So the things that can happen later as a result of this, sorry, I couldn't remember all this, I had to make some bullet point notes, is things like ADHD, ADD, phobias, fears, allergies, and other ailments. Now, there's something else that's been brought to my attention recently, and this is the fact that when we're being born, when we're actually coming down the birth canal, The feel of the birth canal, the mother's body on our back, creates, if you do it to a child, if you run your finger down a child side of a child's back, they wriggle. So as they're coming down, they wriggle their hips, which helps them wriggle down the channel to be born. But what's going on now, there is a doctor in the UK that has discovered that a lot of these children that are showing dyslexia, dyspraxia, fear, chronic anxiety, ADD, ADHD, the old term Asperger's, autistic spectrum disorders, are showing signs of something called retained primitive reflexes. So these are these reflexes in the body, like I just said, that the hips will wriggle because it's of the touching to help it go down the body. So this is like affecting, and what happens is this is affecting the central nervous system of the child. Okay, so the child has got all these natural primitive reflexes going on, and then they're going through birth trauma in hospital instead of at home, and in a calmer environment, in a safer environment for all concerned. Then these reflexes are not being released from the system, because when we go through trauma, our cell memory stores everything, our brain stores everything and remembers this situation is dangerous, and this is what trauma is. It gets stored through the hippocampus into the brain, and it's not letting go of the primitive reflexes in the system, probably. Obviously, I'm not a doctor, so I can't say that. I've got to be careful what I'm saying here, but this all makes a lot of sense when you put it all together, that later in life the children have still got these developmental delay symptoms because they're stuck in the trauma of giving birth, linked to these retained primitive reflexes and possible soul fragmentation, which I talk about. This is when a part of the spirit body moves out of the whole, I besides myself. So you've got a mother that's fragmenting, you've got a baby that's fragmenting, and you've got a father that's possibly fragmenting from the shock. Particularly if the woman has had to have be cut or torn, an episiotomy and things like that. That's not a fun thing to watch your partner go through. That's traumatic to watch someone you love being in so much pain, and it's messy as well. Not all men enjoy it. So you've got all of these things going on, and this can create all kinds of mental, emotional, developmental issues later on in life as well. So it's not just people that are are on the spectrum or have gone being diagnosed with something like that. So these things can be fixed, I'm sure. I mean, this guy's doing a 12-month to 18-month program, but I'm pretty sure that I would be able to work with people, and I'm interested if there's anyone out there that falls into this category. I'm looking for somebody in their kind of mid to late teens that would want to have a session with me to see if we can take out these retained reflexes, primitive reflexes, because it's memory, it's trauma, and it's cell memory. So it gets stored in the cells, it gets stored in the brain, and I'm pretty sure if these were taken out, that it would have a huge, if not 100% effect on all of these different areas that's going on. Because I started thinking, okay, great, well, this doctor has realised that there's something else out there. These retained primitive reflexes are causing developmental delay, but why are there so many of them? And I know people blame the thing. I'm not going to say it because I'm on YouTube, but that may just be a part of it. That may be a part of it. This may be something, because it is such a massive thing across the world now, because more and more people are being diagnosed every year, and it could be something as simple as retained primitive reflexes are causing the developmental delay. So we've got traumatized children through the birth trauma, and you've also got something called that would be post-traumatic stress. So you've got children that are suffering from post-traumatic stress and being diagnosed as on the spectrum. You've also got the potential of the mother having pre-traumatic stress. And this is, whereas post-traumatic is something to do with the past, pre-traumatic stress is linked to fear of the future or anxiety of the future. So there's these two areas linked in to trauma and the birth trauma. And I'm looking into these in my trauma programs that I do for people when I'm treating trauma with people. We're going into birth trauma and all of this kind of stuff as well. Particularly if they fall into any of those things, anxiety that they've had from childhood, dyspraxia, dyslexia, anything like that, hypervigilance, hypertension, insomnia, all of these kind of things can be linked to retained primitive reflexes. I'm really excited about this find because I think more people need to know about it. So if you wouldn't mind, please share this with as many people as you can, as many parents as you can. There is a documentary on Prime at the moment called Attention Please, that explains it. There's a doctor explaining it. I'm not a medical doctor, so people would probably believe it more if they heard it from a medical doctor, as that's the way the world is, unfortunately. But pass it on and let people know about this, particularly if people that fall into that category. Because what we're looking at here is we're looking at prenatal trauma. And I've spoken before on my Instagram channel about the importance of taking care of pregnant women. Loud noises affect the fetus in the womb, and anxiety and any kind of trauma that the mother has is going in to the cell memory of the fetus in the womb as well. So it's really, really important that pregnant women are taken care of, that they eat a super healthy diet. It's funny because when I had my son, I was really hot on eating healthy, and I wasn't always that way. It was just this instinct came into me to eat super healthy while I was pregnant, and I only put on 7 pounds in 9 months in my pregnancy, and my son was 8 pound 1.5 born. So it did make a difference, the amount of weight that I put on as well, oddly enough. And I wasn't dieting, I was still eating 3 meals a day. I was just eating super healthy. So all of this, I wanted to share. As I say, I made notes. I had to read the notes because it's just too much for me to. I only got this information last night, and I'm still processing it myself. So I don't think there's anything else on my list. Oh, there is one other thing that came to me as well, and it's about test tube babies. If any of you out there have ever put an organic product like a piece of fruit or vegetable in a freezer and then taken it out when it's been frozen and let it defrost, it is not the same as it was before it went in. They either go mushy, they lose a consistency, the freezing has an effect on them. So when people are freezing eggs, taking eggs out of women's bodies and freezing them and then using IVF and a man's sperm to fertilize those eggs, what's happening is those eggs are not 100% kosher as they were when they were in the mother's womb. They can't be. It's impossible to freeze something and unfreeze it without it changing at molecular level. And you can see that yourself with anything you take out of your own freezer. It changes. It does change. So this is another thing that I wanted to talk about because it doesn't feel right to me. I know people are desperate to have children, but I've come across other issues in people who can't get pregnant. Issues like maybe having a traumatic birth in another lifetime, or hearing another woman or mother or grandmother talking about a traumatic birth and taking on that trauma. It's called trauma by proxy, secondary trauma, that it wasn't actually your trauma, but you absorb it into yourself, so your body takes that in as if it was your trauma, and saying things like, I'm never going to do that again. That can put an energetic block on a psychological comment like that, can put an energetic block in your templates, in your energy field, in your mental, emotional, physical, spiritual bodies that prevents you from conceiving because of something you've said. If you were working with someone like myself and were guided back through some kind of, regression to where the root cause of what's blocking the problem was, quite often this can be found. And when that's released and changed into the more positive, then fertilization can happen. There's always a reason for everything. There's always a reason for it. So there's all these different areas around mothers and children, and also the importance of breastfeeding is very, very important to babies and bonding. So when you're breastfeeding, you should be eating super healthy as well. That's just as important as when you're pregnant, because that child is taking your cells in, it's taking you into its system. So if you think about what I've said and how many hundreds of thousands, possibly millions of people out there have got mental health issues or fall into these categories, then it could inextricably be linked to birth trauma. And everyone has birth trauma. Every mother that has given birth, every child that is being born has got birth trauma. Unless it was in a super healthy home birth with natural, no painkillers, natural endorphins doing their work, and everything went smoothly, then great, there may be a few of you out there, and thankfully some of that is still happening in the world. But in general, we're kind of coerced into going into hospital. There's big money in it. It's all about trace the money. There's always money involved, but it's not always necessarily the right thing for the mother or the child, and people get frightened into it. Looking back on when I had my son 31 years ago, I wasn't even offered a home birth. It was, hospital or nothing. I didn't even have a choice, which, thinking about it now, was just wrong. It wasn't even on the table. So please do share this with people, because it's very important information, and the more people that know about it, the more women out there, more younger women can start to understand why we've got these problems with so many children being diagnosed as on the spectrum or something like that, when it could be that it is actually retained primitive reflexes, that program is still running in their consciousness. That cell memory of the birth trauma is causing a delay in their spiritual, emotional, mental development, and it could be very possibly healed very easily, which is making a difference. The doctor that's working in England is working with people. It's taking him 12 to 18 months. He's using osteocranial treatments and things like that, because what it actually does is it impairs the central nervous system. But everything, I work differently to other people. I go into the ethers. If you break us down, from the physical, and if you go into a cell, most of the cell, 99.9999% of the cell, is empty space. We're made of ethers and energy, like strings of information, data. And if we go in on that level and change the memories to source energy, to what should be in there, working with that higher level of consciousness, as we do when we connect to the one portal, then I believe we can get results with this really quickly. But I would like to work with some people. So if you do know anyone, please, get them to contact me via my website, not on here. And that's Regan-Sinclair.com. There's probably a link below this video to it. And I would like to do some more research into this and get results. I have worked with people on the spectrum before and got results, but this has opened up a whole other area. If that was working on the brain itself, treating traumatic brain injury and rewiring neuroplasticity, rewiring the neuro pathways in the brain. And now I've got this more information. The cell memory of the whole body and the whole birthing experience needs to be addressed, I believe, and I think this can make a big difference. So this is groundbreaking news I'm sharing with people here, and I'm just really excited about it. I think that we may be onto something that could make such a difference to so many adults and children out there that have been diagnosed with being on the spectrum, and some of them are just placed on, you know, drugs like Ritalin and things like that are damaging them. You know, all drugs damage. They do. That's like a fact. Read the labels. Read the leaflets inside. So thanks for joining me tonight, and I will see some of you in the academy on Saturday, and I hope you have a pleasant evening, and you got through the equinox okay. I've been busy working with the energies and missed last Thursdays as a result, but here I am, and hopefully sharing this information does some good. If it helps one person, it would be worth me sharing it. So thanks for joining me, guys, and I'll see you all again soon. Bye for now.